Hey, welcome back to another Black City Coffee vlog. In this video, I made a video about all the things that you can expect to love about coffee roasting. And not to be negative, but I think it's good to have like a real talk and be like, well, what are the cons? Like anytime I try to get into something new that has a lot of maybe time investment or money or anything like that, I'm like, okay, but what is the worst I'm going to deal with? And I like to approach decision making by looking at what's the worst that could happen. That way I can go, okay, like then I can prepare for it. You know, I could have like a little bit more stoic disposition if, you know, shit hits the fan, or if I run into something that's like super boring or whatever, and I can kind of weather the storm of the journey that I'm about to take with whatever endeavor that I'm going to take on, right? So I think to me, it's a nice little mental exercise that one can go through when they're considering going into a new hobby, like, or a new job even, like coffee roasting or something like that. So here are my things, okay? And sometimes I think you can argue that some of these things can be argued in the way that could be positive, and I definitely do. But I think if we just look at it and try to be objective about it and not try to spin everything and spin doctor everything, like let's just have an objective, honest conversation about stuff, okay? So number one, in no particular order, the learning is constant, and you have to always kind of like adjust what you're learning, because coffee itself is a sort of living thing. You know, I have greens sitting here in my stores, and this is something that you'll hear a lot of people say when you're getting into is like, yeah, coffee is a living thing. It's always changing. So as it's sitting there raw in your stores or in your bags and stuff like that, it's still aging. So as it ages, it changes. And so the way that you would approach a coffee that's super fresh is going to be different than when it's maybe 6 months older, 1 month, not really 6 months older, but like maybe 2 years older, something like that. So yeah, you're always learning, you're always adjusting, which means you can't really approach everything with just a template blanket approach. You know, you can have like a template blanket philosophy, and then from there know that you could have to maybe adjust things or refine things, and if you care, that's very much a possibility of having to change things and be very adaptable and flexible all the time. And that's just with roasting coffee. There's all this other stuff that goes along with roasting coffee, or actually running a business of roasting coffee, which I played around with that idea for a little bit. And I think I got a pretty good taste, and I could kind of see and make some parallels to like the other businesses that I've been involved in that were not. Number two, you know, your costs will just go up as time goes on. That's just what happens. Things are just going to get more and more expensive. In the short time that I've been roasting coffee and just selling right here from home, my costs have gone up a lot. So I haven't changed my prices, I think, at all. And because there's so much more competition now, it's really hard for me to compete on a price level, which is not something I'm particularly interested in. I don't want to be competitive. It's not really why I'm in the space now. It's more passion. But I definitely don't make a lot of profit. So, and that's because costs are always going up. And that kind of sucks for, you know, for Black City customers, is like, even how small they are, how small the pool is, you know, they have to pay a pretty hefty shipping fee. Even if it's, you'll be lucky, like if it's going here, like Pasadena, if it's going Pasadena, it's still going to be like $5, $4 to $5, you know. So as you get further along the line, you know, we go into Florida, we go to New York, yeah, that's going to be at least $8 or $9 now. It's crazy. It's crazy. And that's to ship, you know, like under a pound, you know what I mean? So costs are always going up. If you don't sell your stock fast enough, you know, hopefully you're buying fresh coffee and you're selling fresh coffee. If you don't sell it fast enough, now you're dealing with old stock, dead stock, right? And you have to come up with creative ways in order to deal with that, maybe to recoup your cost, maybe to work it into a blend. You start looking at how other people do it in the industry. But it sucks to just know, to me, because maybe I'm very purist or whatever, but I'm like, oh, it's getting older. You know, and I'm not doing my due diligence to be like a salesman and move this product, because that's what it becomes when you get into a business that is not like service based. There's always service in business, but it's not service based. For example, we have a photography business that's called service based business. This is called like retail. It's called retail. So you're moving product, you're selling real tangible things versus a service, right? So it becomes more this like, it's the other side of the equation of business and commerce, which is like moving numbers of things. And so while you could be so passionate and so loving and so precious about coffee, inputting that other side of things, the business side of things, of just like, I need to move this coffee. I need to move this inventory, this stock, right? And so it kind of like whittles away at the sort of romantic perspective that you have about your coffee. You're like, I need to move this guy. And that's not, again, these could all be argued, in different ways. It's not necessarily a con, and I don't need to like have that argument on here, but like, it's just something to consider. Another thing, you won't be able to offer something forever, because coffee is a living thing, and we don't always have, just like sustainable crops of everything all the time, which is, we definitely felt that in the industry last year when Brazil got hit with that massive, like, it was like either a big coffee rust thing, or there was like the huge thing with Brazil's coffee, I forget right now, but they had this big issue where it took out so much of their coffee, of so much their harvest. And so everybody was feeling that we so relied on this like very, very affordable coffee, but like everybody works it into their blends, from like Starbucks to me, So we were feeling that pinch. And so there is that reality, and it's definitely a conversation of like how we're going to address sustainability of trying to offer these same great products to customers for years to come. It's an issue, and that's just something to think about, okay? And that comes with its fair share of stress, because if you can't offer a certain product, maybe a customer that's attached to that product, and they're like, damn, I always go to them for this blend or whatever it is, and for whatever reason you can't create it, recreate it, you could lose business there. So, and everybody loses business there. Everybody hurts there when we don't have a sustainable product, That's kind of a big deal. Yeah, I just talked about this. It was like shipping costs are high. And it's not that like everything is increasing in price, but like in general, it's just shipping is high, which is, I think, will be interesting in that we kind of saw an influx of like online commerce, which is great. It's such a great way to, I think, try to like make a living, and if you could make it work for you, everything online, it's dope. But you just lose that like human connection with people, which I could see cafes of like the mom and pop cafe coming back really strong in these next couple of years with all of these weird kind of changes going on. But I think people will be really like hungry for community again at some point, like and being able to sell more like, craft, mini roasters, small roasters will be able to sell more. So I think in the future, I think it is going to go that way, because we've become so global with everything in a way where it's like, it kind of diluted it. Everything is slick in the marketing, everything is branding, everything is slick, And so now maybe we're going to maybe see more focus on maybe like real community, authentic relationships, authentic conversations between the buyer and the seller. And I don't know. I think I have a lot of hope for the future in terms of where coffee will go, in terms of the next vibe and wave. I think it will be a response to the shipping being so high, Another thing too, another con about, starting on your own, which a lot of people have already told me over DM, is like, this is hard. Like, I got to do the marketing, I got to do the branding, I got to do the roasting, I got to do the packing. And I'm like, hey, I'm right there with you. And it's intense. If you love it, then that work, especially in the beginning, is sort of honeymoon phase. You're so excited to be making labels. You're so excited to be packing your own coffee. Like, that was a fantasy of mine before I was doing it, of course. And I was like, man, one day I was on my hot top. I was like, I'm going to have a slick logo that I love. And this is before before so much happened to me, but I'm gonna have a slick logo. I'm gonna look at my product and have it right here in front of my face, you know, like, and I'm gonna name it something cool, you know, and that fantasy, that honeymoon phase of doing that, it will go away after a couple years. And then now it just becomes work. You still love what you're packing and doing, because I do. I mean, for me, I'm still pretty new too, but if I'm packing orders and I know I got to do something else, then I'm like, oh man, I need somebody to help me, or I can't do all this on my own. Or like when my IG presence, I haven't touched it in a couple of weeks. I'm like, oh gosh, it's just another thing to do. If it's not your like sole focus, if it's your sole focus, it's still a lot of stuff to do. You still got to roast the coffee, take the orders, customer service, so yeah, that's still something. I think people really don't, especially if you haven't run a business before, maybe like really understood what that's about. And you got to be all in. You know, there's just really no way around it. You can do it on the side like I do. And when I do it on the side like I do sometimes, I got to tell you, I'm like, oh damn, I got to do that order and I got to now stop this and roast and stuff like that. I've worked it in. It's into my lifestyle. It's not like it's a chore, but I could definitely see where it could be. You know, if I didn't love it as much as I do and had the stoic, mindful practices that I do with this hobby, I could definitely see it getting away from me and becoming more like a chore than what I would want it to be, which is like my precious, loving hobby. Okay? Yeah, it could be a time suck. If you have a small operation, like I do, I have a 1 kg machine, right? So I have a very small capacity for creating a lot of coffee. If randomly I got a big order, which it happens sometimes, I'll be like, oh God, I got to ship out, like 50 pounds of coffee or whatever it is. And then I'm like, okay, that's going to take basically my whole morning. And that means no walking the dogs, no cooking meals for the family, no like answering emails because I want to do a good job. Like, it's such a time suck, you know, especially if it's not your main thing, you know. So it's quite a time suck. And then not only have to roast the coffee, that takes a long time to do that well if you're doing everything manually. You've got to pack it. Now, packing orders is another thing. Trying to measure everything correctly, label everything correctly, being clean about everything, all that stuff. You know, just like packing orders. Like, I thought it was so dope in the beginning. Now it's kind of a drag. Yeah. And I say that honestly, but still with love. Like, still with love, it's a drag. You know, I still love seeing my logo, and like the little memories will pop up when I look at it and I'm packing it and I'm sealing it out. And that helps for me to not feel like it's a drag, to go through sort of like grateful mental vocalizations in my mind as I'm doing it. But like, after how many bags, there's only so many. I don't know. I'm human. Like, I'm like, oh man, my back hurts, my feet hurt, you know, just being on your feet all day from roasting, and now you're packing and you're just like, I need to sit down. Especially me, I have like, you know, my little excuse, I got a broken neck and a broken back, or I'm recovering from it. Okay, lastly, okay, so I think the worst thing, this was no like in particular order, right? Like, those were all just things that sort of popped up. I'm sure there's more little cons and stuff, but those are the big ones. I think that sort of like stick out, that sort of like interrupt my living. And I'm not trying to be like a little complainer, but that's just, you know, my honest conversation about it. The worst thing, and I still say this with love too, because I understand, but is a unreasonable, unhappy customer. That's the worst, dude. Like, I have such empathy for, you know, a company, even a big company like Clutch or Onyx or like Starbucks, and you have people who come in and write like a 1-star or 2-star review or something like that, or complain, you know, and it's like, well, but you know, you're talking to the customer, you didn't follow directions, or you didn't heed the best practices, or you made the wrong order, you know what I mean? Like, and then they come at you with, I don't know, their bad day or their bad attitude or their like defense. And especially when you're just one person, and you were clear about all the things, it can kind of seem like you're not taking, like for the customer, you're not taking any personal accountability. And that's just one little thing, right? Think about all the little interactions that happen all the time with big business, small business, home business like this. And when somebody doesn't like your stuff, that's like the bottom line of it. Oh, you didn't like it. Or you had a bad experience. Or even when it's not your fault, you still feel terrible. Like just that emotional toll. And I'll tell you all day long, like I have my stoic practices about it. We deal with it occasionally in our other businesses. And it just happens. You know, it's customer service, it's communication, it's all that stuff. And that goes without saying, I guess, but like I'm saying it. Yeah, it's just dealing with other people that you find could be unreasonable, you know, especially if you, in your heart of hearts, you're trying your best, you know. So those are the cons. That's the worst thing, is not try to be like crying about it and stuff. But I think definitely you got to think about it. You got to consider it. That way, when it comes, because it will come, you will deal with unhappy customer for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. You will deal with shipping problem. You will deal with inventory problem. You will deal with your own laziness or your own mistake, your own negligence, all that stuff. And if you can prepare your mind and be sort of stoic about it, and stoic does not mean apathetic. You know, stoic means like through the struggle. Put up the put up the definition for me, please. You can weather the storm, and I think that sort of attitude or that sort of mentality makes one stronger, I think more respectable as a company as well. Like, hey, we can make mistakes, but we know how to handle them with grace and with stoicism, provide good leadership, you know what I mean? So those are a couple things that I think one should think about when they're stepping into any new hobby, but specifically we're talking about roasting coffee. And that's definitely the way I try to approach new stuff. Like I'm trying to get into hunting and shooting and things. I'm like, well, what is the worst case scenario? And it turns out the worst case scenario is pretty hefty, you know? So same thing. As long as you're prepared for the worst case scenario, you don't have to freak yourself out as much or panic or or feel like you're alone. You know, there's ways to like kind of go about it and problem solve it so you can move forward and not have this feeling of stuck. I got that a lot too in the DMs. Hey, I'm feeling stuck. Things like that. And I'm like, okay, you know, let's make a video about it. Let's talk about the cons. I think that sort of sums up a lot of the questions that I'm getting in the DMs, and which I appreciate, and the emails and stuff. So I hope that helps. Happy New Year. I think I said that last time. A little update. We were talking about tasting, cupping notes, labels, whether or not this whole like conversation about tasting notes and stuff, and like, what should I put on my, you know, my label? This is Onyx's very cool, aesthetically pleasing and symmetrical thing to educate you about coffee and how to appreciate coffee. And if you want to dive in deep into coffee, about flavor, varietal. So cool, right? Right here. And they even have like on the other thingy over there, like ways to educate the customer. Now, I've deliberated that I don't need to change anything. If you, I have such a small base, and I think a very, you know, very close connection with the people that buy coffee from me. So if you are interested, you ask me questions. You know, people should feel comfortable enough. You guys already sent me a bunch of DMs. Ask me questions about it so you can feed your own curiosity. This is not about me saying I'm Onyx or saying I'm this or saying I'm that. It's more like, here's what I'm interested in. I share it. I vlog about it. I put it online and everything. And I think I put out all of the relevant information, okay? But if you want to go deeper, you definitely can, and there's definitely other brands that can that dive in deep with that and make it all aesthetic and everything like that. But with me, if you want to go deeper, you can always ask me questions, meaning like, I'm confused about this acidic thing. Does that mean sour? Like, you can ask me questions like that, and I'd be happy to answer them, okay? Because I know that people are maybe wanting to try something new or different than like a traditional cup, but maybe afraid, or maybe don't know, can't even identify what they're tasting and say, this is supposed to be good coffee? Like, what am I supposed to think about that? Like, let's have the conversation. Okay, and yeah, I don't feel like I need to change anything about my label based upon this, because if you're buying coffee from me, I don't think it's that big of a concern. We have those little blips here and there, like, I don't taste your grilled peaches or whatever it is. And that's fine. And I'll be like, okay, well, you know, I think I've handled that fine. And but I don't think changing it will help it anymore, you know. So yeah, that's the update on the label and whether or not we were going to make changes to how we were going to, you know, set up expectations as to what a coffee can taste like. For me, it's like, I just need to know if it's like on the bright side or is it on the sweeter side. That's really all I need to know. And I feel like if I just keep putting that message out, then people who kind of think the same way will align themselves with that, okay? If you want to ask me questions, I'm definitely here for you. So, yeah, I think for every coffee lover, there's a language or a lane that you can find yourself in and get really snuggly on, and, you know, there's a perfect fit for you out there. There's so many of us now, which is so cool. And maybe it's just because I'm in it now, but I don't feel like there were this many roasters and getting started. It's really cool. And the community is growing. So it's pretty awesome. So yeah, ask away. Okay, cool. Good things. That was it. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.